The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It is war in the Middle East. The United States and Israel take down the despotic Iranian regime. We'll have the latest with a slew of experts on today's show. Horrific shootings in Austin, Texas, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and a mother in Northern Virginia stabbed to death by an illegal immigrant. And all of the breaking news of this day. It is Monday, March the 2nd. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings, reporting to you from your nation's capital here on Salem. And we begin today with war. We all awoke Saturday morning to the news that the United States and Israel had decapitated the Iranian regime and begun a massive air and naval campaign against a group of fanatics who had themselves been at war with Western civilization for the last 47 years. Now, a war of this scale does not come without risk. As we arrive on the air today, 4 U.S. servicemen have died. Some others have been injured. And this morning, we learned that 3 American F-15 fighter jets were shot down, not by the enemy, but by friendly fire from Kuwaiti air defenses. All of the personnel involved in that incident, however, and thank goodness, are safe and recovered. But by all accounts, the war effort is off to an incredible start. The top level of the Iranian regime was eliminated instantly at the beginning. We have air superiority over Iran to fly thousands of sorties and to strike targets at will. I did speak with senior administration officials this weekend. There was intelligence and a sense that Iran was preparing to strike U.S. targets, military and civilian, with its ballistic missiles. That was one of the reasons for the U.S. attack. The fact that Iran would not give up its nuclear ambitions was another. And of course, 47 years of terrorism against the United States, responsibility for thousands of American deaths and injuries. President Donald J. Trump spoke to my CNN colleague, Jake Tapper, this morning and told him that the U.S. hasn't even started hitting the Iranians hard yet. He said the big wave begins soon. And the president spoke this morning at the White House about the threat that Iran posed to the United States. Let's hear from the president in cut number 10.
An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat to the Middle East, but also to the American people. Our country itself would be under threat, and it was very nearly under threat. I was very proud to have knocked out the Iran nuclear deal by President Barack Hussein Obama. That was a horrible, horrible, dangerous document. They would have had nuclear weapons 3 years ago.
And how are Iranians around the world and in the United States reacting to all of this? Well, they're dancing in the streets. Here's some audio and video of the celebrations in Los Angeles, California, home to one of the largest Iranian diasporas in the world. Let's take a look at that. Clip number 12, please. And for our radio audience, what you're seeing in Los Angeles on the streets, people dancing, people waving Iranian flags, not the regime's flag, but the previous iteration of Iran. They're waving American flags. They're waving Israeli flags. They're cheering for our president, Donald J. Trump. On today's show, we have an expert lineup of analysts to break down all of this war coverage. Rebecca Heinrichs is our official national security analyst. She's from the Hudson Institute. She joins to discuss the progress of the military campaign so far. That'll be in about 10 minutes at 20 minutes past the hour. At 33 minutes past the hour, we have Jonathan Conricus, a former spokesperson for the IDF, the Israeli military, He'll talk about the Israeli piece of this. And at about 50 minutes past the hour, how is the media handling all of this? Well, several outlets are disgracing themselves with how they've described the Ayatollah. Maya Sulkin from the Free Press has some outstanding reporting on the media's coverage of all of this. She'll come up at the end of the hour. This show, as always, bringing you the best expert analysis, the most up-to-the-minute news, and the most common sense, insightful commentary on the radio dial today. We'll have more on the Iranian war throughout the hour. There is other news today, sad news. Let's go to Austin, Texas, where a radical Muslim gunman from Senegal opened fire in a bar in the wee hours Sunday morning. 2 people are dead, 14 more injured. Terrible scene at that location. Incredibly, Austin police responded within 57 seconds. Let's see cut 9 here.
This incident started with, again, that calls for a male shooting at Buford's Bar on West 6th Street. Officers immediately transitioned, came over East 6th to West 6th Street, and were faced with the individual with the gun, and 3 of our officers returned fire, killing the suspect.
The gunman here is named, you know what? I'm not going to read his name. He doesn't deserve it. But he came here from Senegal. He was a naturalized citizen in the United States. He was wearing a Property of Allah hoodie in a photo released by authorities. Pretty sickening. The feds are looking into whether this can be considered terrorism. Now, in the last few minutes, Fox News has obtained a picture of the T-shirt the gunman was wearing under his Property of Allah sweatshirt, and it had the flag of the Iranian regime on it. In Cincinnati, Ohio, 9 people were taken to the hospital after a mass shooting occurred at a music venue in Cincinnati's East End in the early hours Sunday morning. No arrests so far. No suspects even, as far as we know, but a terrible scene in Cincinnati. And in Northern Virginia, here we go again. An illegal alien has killed an American citizen. The details are gruesome. A 41-year-old mother was stabbed to death at a Northern Virginia bus stop. The alien had dozens of prior arrests for rape and assault, according to the police there. The victim here is Stephanie Minter, age 41, fatally stabbed, allegedly, by Abdul Jallo, a Sierra Leone national. This all happened at a bus stop in Fairfax County. Let's listen to cut number 8, local news.
41-year-old Stephanie Minter died from her injuries. Her family just posting this obituary describing her as, quote, a beam of light in dark places. Charged in her killing, 32-year-old Abdul Jallo, already well known to police and prosecutors. Court records show the unhoused man had a reputation for violence, an alleged rape in 2018, then a series of 4 alleged stabbings, and more recently, before the alleged murder, 2 alleged assaults. But only once was Jallo convicted and sent to prison. In February of 2023, he stabbed a 73-year-old man so forcefully the blade broke off the knife.
That's NBC4 television in Washington on that story. Now, this all comes as the new governor of Virginia, Democrat Abigail Spanberger, has ordered state law enforcement to stop cooperating with ICE to deport violent illegal aliens. And this illegal alien, why was he out of jail? Because of the soft on crime policies of Democrats. Folks, the pattern here is troubling. Democrats let in millions of illegal aliens. Democrats do everything they can to stop them from being deported. Democrats do everything they can to let violent criminals of all kinds out of jail. And now a 41-year-old mother is dead, another victim in the Democrats' war on American citizens, on public safety, on law and order, and on our national sovereignty. We have people here in our country. Some are here illegally. Some are claiming asylum. Some have a status of some kind. Some are naturalized citizens. But we do have people in our country that came here, that wish us harm, that wish you harm, that hate America and hate Americans. And the failure to take it seriously, the decision to live this way, It is a choice made by politicians, and it is one that we do not have to continue to make. I'm Scott Jennings here on Salem. Let's get some news about aches and pains. We have a listener story, this one coming in from Keith in Washington, an extremely active man, a former college athlete, a martial arts instructor. He was teaching multiple martial arts classes a day. Over time, his body was wearing down, but after trying Relief Factor, here's the report from Keith. Knee pain nearly disappeared, neck pain dropping significantly, and he was able to keep training and earn his black belt. We have been using Relief Factor in the Jennings household. My dad would tell you it's working for him. He loves it. He doesn't need convincing. He takes it every day. He's noticed a real difference. And so when you use a product and it works, you tend to be happy about it and you tend to want to tell other people about it. That's what's happening here at the Scott Jennings Show. If you'd like to move easier and stay active, my recommendation is try the 3-week quick start. That's Relief Factor's 3-week plan for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or visit ReliefFactor.com. When we come back, we'll resume full Iran war coverage. Rebecca Heinrichs is with us here on the Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. You know, I got to tell you, I think nutrition has gotten way too complicated. Every week there's a new powder, a new lab-created formula, some new breakthrough. But here is the truth. We've been told since we were kids to eat our fruits and vegetables. Nobody really had to explain why. We just did it. Because when you eat whole foods, you're getting phytonutrients, those natural compounds that your body uses to adjust, repair, and respond every single day. That's not hype. That's how human beings were designed. That's why I take Balance of Nature. They use a tailored vacuum cold process that stabilizes the phytonutrition in fruits and veggies, so you're getting real whole food nutrition, not synthetic substitutes. Their whole health system includes fruits and veggies plus fiber and spice, 47 ingredients in one simple routine. I take it myself. If you want to fight the good fight, go to balanceofnature.com to subscribe and save today. Join hundreds of thousands of customers in one simple routine that is changing the world.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
It is Monday, March the 2nd. This morning, War Secretary Pete Hegseth held a news conference to brief on the military effort in Iran. Here's part of that, cut number 1.
Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it.
Joining us now, Rebecca Heinrichs, official foreign policy and national security correspondent of the Scott Jennings Show, also a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. Find her on the X platform at RL Heinrichs. Rebecca, good day to you. What do you make of the war effort so far?
Good to be with you here, Scott. So I thought that the press conferences this morning with Secretary Hegseth and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, were excellent. I think that a lot of the naysayers and skeptics who have been saying we don't understand what the strategy is, we don't understand what the war aims are, I think they should be disabused of that. They were very clear that we are getting rid of the Iran regime's nuclear program, whatever is left of it, and their ballistic missile fleet, and we are preventing them from conducting, funding, and supplying Islamic radicalism throughout the Middle East. President Trump also indicated today that we are ahead of schedule, I believe is how he characterized it, in terms of taking out the Islamic Republic's leadership. So I think so far so good. Obviously, I am grieving that we've lost 3 American warfighters, and I keep thinking about their family all day today, and I'm praying that we don't have any more losses, Scott.
Rebecca, is it your understanding that we have complete air superiority over Iran? In other words, are we flying around as we see fit and striking targets as we see fit?
We are. So the first wave of the campaign was to essentially blind and confuse the regime, take out as many of their air defenses as was left over from the attack last summer that Israel conducted, and to take out their command and control, that is the leadership's ability to give orders and to basically organize some kind of coherent response. And so now the United States with the Israelis are refueling over Iranian airspace, which is a thing that you only do if you have total air superiority. So, yes, we have accomplished that in the first wave of the strikes.
And we've heard the president make some remarks this morning. He called up a few journalists who were thinking about what happens next in Iran. He said something to the effect of, well, some of the people that might have taken over were actually killed in the initial wave of strikes. What did you make of the president's comments on that? And where do you think we're headed here? Obviously, we're in the initial stages of the fog of war, but the Iranian regime, what indications do you see that they are actually getting control of their government? And let me just add one more thing. Do you see indications from any of your sources that the Iranian people are somehow preparing to retake control of their country?
Great questions. So I love it when President Trump gives information directly, because you do get some insight into exactly how he's thinking and the things that he's concerned about and tracking. And he's pretty transparent with the American people. So he indicated that some of the leaders that we would be looking for in sort of second-tier, third-tier Iranian leadership to potentially take over and cooperate with the United States have been killed. And that doesn't mean that we're still not going to look for another alternative. It seems to me as though what the Trump administration would be satisfied with is something like what we saw in Venezuela after we captured Maduro. And that is that we just need a compliant Iranian regime. We don't want these Islamo-fascists controlling Iran and conducting hostilities to maim and kill Americans and our allies. We don't want Islamo-fascists trying to get a nuclear weapon that can be delivered on ballistic missiles. And so we will continue to kill our way through the leadership until we find somebody who would like to live more than he wants to be a martyr for Islamofascism. And so I think that the Trump administration has certainly got somebody on the ground in there. I don't know if it's a three-letter agency operating in there or working through a third-party facilitator like Oman, some kind of mediator looking for defections and people willing to cooperate.
That voice you're hearing on the Scott Jennings Show, our official national security correspondent, Rebecca Heinrichs. She is from the Hudson Institute. Rebecca, if you'll keep your phone on, we're going to keep calling you for the rest of this war effort. It sounds like we may be in for a few weeks of this, but we always appreciate your expert analysis. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to take a break. When we come back, we have an interesting guest coming on, Jonathan Conricus. He is a former spokesperson for the IDF, that is the Israeli military. He is one of the biggest experts on how Israel engages in a situation like this. We want to get their piece of it. Jonathan Conricus joins us next. You're listening to Common Sense for the American People. I'm Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
You know something? Universities are kind of a bad deal. 6 figures of debt for a bachelor's degree that signals less every year. 4 years spent navigating ideological rules instead of learning how to think. Grades inflated, standards lowered, dissent punished. We call it higher education, but it's mostly expensive daycare with a credential attached. The University of Austin, also known as UATX, is different, however. Admissions at UATX are based on test scores alone. No essays, no resumes. Nobody cares who your parents know. If you're smart enough, you're in. UATX students turned down UChicago and fled Barnard to complete a demanding great books core, including Aristotle, Shakespeare, de Tocqueville, alongside real math, science, economics, and AI. Classes are small, professors actually know your name, grades aren't padded, excellence is measured and rewarded. From day one, students work directly with top founders, investors, and institutions, building companies, doing serious research, and landing real internships. And here's the part that changes everything. There is no tuition. Thanks to private donors, every UATX student graduates debt-free. You're free to take risks, free to start companies, and free to build a life instead of paying off loans. If you want an empty credential, look elsewhere. If you want a serious education that actually prepares you to lead, apply to the University of Austin. Visit uaustin.org. That's uaustin.org.
When he's not in the Oval Office or owning the libs on CNN, he's here with us. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Monday, March the 2nd, and our full war coverage continues. We're going to go live to Israel now. Here with us is Jonathan Heinrichs. He is a former spokesperson for the IDF, the military of Israel, and he is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He is in Tel Aviv, Israel, and making his inaugural appearance on the Scott Jennings Show. Jonathan Heinrichs, welcome in here to Common Sense for the American People. We're honored to have you, sir.
I am honored to be here. Pleasure to be here for the first time.
Yes, thank you, my friend. We have seen volleys of Iranian missiles and drones fired toward Israel over the last few days. Have you been getting any sleep? How are the Israeli people feeling as we see them going in and out of the bomb shelters today?
Yeah, in and out, that's the word, and shuffling back and forth, lots of alarms all across the country. I mean, we're a small country, so with the relative few amount of ballistic missiles, you can get, 10 million people into shelters quite quickly. The more important part is how many Israelis have been killed. Currently, it is 11 Israeli civilians that have been murdered by Iranian ballistic missiles, 9 yesterday, in a mega event where a synagogue actually collapsed, and inside a lot of people were killed. They were in shelter that was under a synagogue, and the bomb hit the synagogue directly, disintegrated, and even the shelter was penetrated. So 9 people were killed there, and then we've had 2 women die in Tel Aviv as a result of missile attacks as well. So I'd say that, on the positive side, it is far less than what we anticipated. We thought that the Iranians would be able to fire more ballistic missiles. I think we can thank the joint efforts of the US and Israel to subdue Iranian ballistic missile launchers. That's an effective race that is ongoing now. On one hand, the Iranians are trying to fire missiles. On the other hand, Israel and the US are trying to strike out the missile launchers and launching depots. And by the looks of it, granted, the Iranians are firing missiles at Israel and the region, but it's far less than what we had anticipated. And frankly, the last alarm was 5 hours ago. That's a lot of time without an alarm, and I cherish every moment.
Jonathan, I was in Israel last summer for the 12-day war and watched a lot of missiles flying over Israeli airspace. Maybe compare that to what we're seeing now. It sounds like the attacks are far less frequent and the volume is much lower this time around.
Yeah, you're correct. And I remember you being here, and I saw your reporting out of it, and I think it was tremendous. The situation is that the opening salvo of this operation, Epic Fury or Roaring Lion, it started where we ended in June 25, and that was already degrading the Iranian missile capabilities. What Israel and the US did together in the opening salvo was to strike at command and control nodes, headquarters, etc., take out a lot of key personnel. I think that had a kind of a disabling effect on Iranian missile units. And what Israel and the US have been doing since is spotting those launchers. So the bottom line here is that we are, then those 12 days, we had dozens of missiles fired every day, and it was almost a total of 400 ballistic missiles. And for those in the audience who aren't familiar with what that means is, imagine the object the size of a school bus, carrying a payload of about at least half a ton. Some of them have 1 ton, but at least half a ton of high-yield explosives. When they impact on the ground, it is damage and destruction, which is very difficult to imagine. It's just massive. It penetrates all defenses, unfortunately, even the shelters, if it's directly hit. But again, the positive side is that the Iranians are able to fire less. Now, we don't know if the Iranians are just, trying to keep their powder dry and not to run out of missiles, understanding that they have a finite supply, or it's because we've taken out the launchers. In any case, I'm happy that the situation is better than what we anticipated. It is odd to see, when we look at the region, when we see what the Iranians are doing in the region, lashing out firing missiles at 6 or 7 different Muslim countries, and even at European countries, even at Cyprus. They fired both ballistic missiles and attack drones. But we see casualties in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates, in Kuwait, in Qatar, Bahrain, and even and places like this. So it is quite surprising to me that the Iranians would do this strategic mistake and lash out the way that they have. It's not going to do them any favors. And instead of what I think they wanted to do was to build pressure on the US by applying force on these Arab states and hoping that they would tell the US, please stop with the fighting because we can't take the Iranian attack. What's happening is actually the opposite. And these countries are now saying, well, by all means, US and Israel carry on, and all God's strength with you, and we're also going to perhaps participate in the fighting. And that's definitely a surprise. That I didn't have that in my bingo card when I thought how this would play out.
Yeah, you bring up my next question, which is the likelihood that we see Arab Gulf states engaging militarily. Do you think we're going to see that here in the next day or two?
You know what? I wouldn't have said so 2 days ago, but I think that there's actually a chance, not because they've found the spirit, leadership, and bravery needed to do so. Maybe that these countries in the region, they're not necessarily bad, but they're not necessarily known for their combat bravery and their ability to stand up to bullies. They've been cowering under the Iranians for quite a while, and been held safe by the American umbrella of safety that the U.S. Safety and security that the U.S. has spread over them. They have a lot of tech, but for the first time, I think what they're seeing and the calculation that they're making is that Iran is weakened and that Iran is exposed and vulnerable. And if there ever was a best opportunity for the Saudis, the Emiratis, and others to actually retaliate against Iran, now is a great time, because Iran doesn't have any air defenses and they're exposed and they're in disarray. So just for the books, for the records, it would be a pretty smart thing to do, and probably the right thing to do for domestic and political purposes as well for the Saudis and Emiratis. Definitely, it's warranted, because the Iranians have fired more than 150 ballistic missiles at the UAE. They have fired more than 500 explosive drones and 2 cruise missiles at the UAE. I don't know exactly how many at Saudi, but these are substantial amounts. This is aggression, direct aggression by the Iranians against these countries, and they, by all means, should defend themselves.
That voice you're hearing on the Scott Jennings Show today, Jonathan Heinrichs. He's a former spokesperson for the IDF, that's the military in Israel. He's also a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Seems to me that this alliance between the United States and Israel is something we should talk about. And our Secretary of War here, Pete Hegseth, did do that this morning. Jonathan, I'm going to play a clip of Pete Hegseth discussing our ally Israel, and I want to get your reaction to it. Let's play cut number 2.
Israel has clear missions as well, for which we are grateful. Capable partners, as we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects. All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. We fight to win, and we don't waste time or lives.
Jonathan, maybe talk to us, because of your experience, about the close coordination that goes on between the United States military and the Israeli military, and what makes that coordination so lethal.
Yeah, I appreciate very much, and so do many other Israelis, the words of Secretary of War Hegseth, and of course the leadership of the president and most of the team of the administration, Secretary Rubio and many others. We can see that there's the bond here at a moral level, but there's also at the real, actual, factual level, unprecedented cooperation. What I've seen Israeli and American officers do is share raw intel at the purest level, build scenarios together, build entire operations and targeting procedures, and actually coordinate operations and then rehearse it together at an unprecedented level of intimacy. I mean, the relationship here between the U.S. and Israel, militarily speaking, is something that has grown over years. I think, the U.S. it's an empire that is capable of working with other countries, with other militaries. It is built to work in coalitions. Israel isn't. For many years, we knew how to fight, but we knew how to fight alone. And this is now the first time where we, I think, are seeing the excellent benefits of being able to plan together and operate together, both offensively against Iran and striking Iranian targets, and also defensively protecting assets, American assets, and protecting Israel. I am in awe of the professionalism. I am very grateful for the skill, the bravery, the discipline, and the composure of our armed forces, whether it's the pilots, men and women, by the way. We have more than 30 female pilots, Israeli female pilots, who have participated in the sorties over Iran. That in itself is a beautiful thing. And what one of our Persian language spokespeople said, she's also a woman, she said that Israeli women are not bystanders to history. They make history, which is such a stark contrast to how women are treated under the Islamic regime in Iran. And I hope that that will, of course, change, and that the beautiful potential of women in Iran will be unleashed for the better of Iranian society. But the cooperation is strong. It is growing even stronger, and I'm very happy. I think it is mutually beneficial. We're learning from each other, we are improving each other, and we are delivering on the battlefield. I can only express my condolences to the families of what I understand is now 5 fallen American service members, if the number is correct, because I understand the last also succumbed to his wounds. And condolences to the family. I'm a soldier myself. I have lost soldiers in combat. I know what that means, and I hope that their families will at least find comfort in the fact that their children paid the ultimate sacrifice, but they're doing it for a very good cause.
May God rest all of their souls. It is, in fact, a noble cause. Jonathan Heinrichs, former IDF spokesman and senior fellow at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies, thanks for coming on. We'll call you back in the days ahead as this unfolds. It is a historic situation, and we're grateful for your time today.
Indeed. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right, Jonathan Heinrichs, excellent report from Tel Aviv, Israel. By the way, as Operation Epic Fury intensifies, the world braces for what comes next. And in the Holy Land, red alert sirens are filling the air. They give you about 15 seconds to reach the nearest bomb shelter. The situation is serious. The threat is real. In times like these, faith and freedom aren't just abstract ideas. They're what we depend on. And you can support the efforts in Israel by helping our partners at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Please stand with Israel in prayer today. Visit supportifcj.org. The Holy Land depends on your prayerful support. More on this when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
You know, gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of 5-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit learscott.com.
You've heard the narratives. Now get the truth. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Monday, March the 2nd, full coverage of the war effort in Iran continues here on the Scott Jennings Show. This weekend, by the way, you may have seen some interesting headlines and reporting from the mainstream media around the death of the Ayatollah. From the New York Times, Ayatollah Khamenei, hardline cleric who made Iran a regional power, dead at 86. Washington Post, not much better. They claim that under Khamenei, quote, Iran did not seek to destroy the Jewish state militarily. He merely sought its dissolution through, quote, popular referendum. The whitewashing of the Ayatollah is already incredible. And Maya Sulkin at the Free Press is all over it. Maya, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show. How is the media covering this already, and how are they failing? That's what I'd like for you to tell our listeners today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You know, if you are relying on the Times or the Guardian or the Washington Post for the Ayatollah's obituaries, you might think, you know, a world leader, albeit maybe a slightly controversial one, had died. Like you said, they called him a hardline cleric, which, as I say, it's kind of like calling Hitler a hardline nationalist. The Guardian kind of took us through a literary tour of the Ayatollah's life, his fondness for Persian poetry. And what really just stood out to me is the fact that the Iranian people or anyone paying close attention do not need an obituary to tell them who Khamenei was. He was not a cleric or a statesman. He was a dictator, an evil one, who terrorized people who believed in basic human rights. So the way that he has been depicted has kind of been, really, really remarkable.
Our guest today is Maya Sulkin, intrepid reporter with the Free Press. Maya, I was reading with astonishment from the Washington Post this weekend after this all was confirmed. I'll read it to you. With his bushy white beard and easy smile, Ayatollah Khamenei cut a more avuncular figure in public than his perpetually scowling but much more revered mentor, and he was known to be fond of Persian poetry and classic Western novels. Bushy white beard and easy smile. Maya, you might have thought that we had bombed Santa Claus if you read the Washington Post. I was astonished that this sentence was written by a journalist and approved by an editor.
Yeah, I mean, they also kind of went on to say that, like you said, he didn't, seek to destroy the Jewish state militarily, just sought, dissolution through referendum. I mean, how they reached this conclusion when, you don't even have to be following the region closely, but just go to his X feed and post after post is, describing Israel as a cancerous tumor, assuring his followers, Zionism was always close to implosion. How they reached that conclusion and decided that his beard and smile were, the most important parts of his legacy is a complete mystery to me.
As a journalist, what do you think other journalists need to keep in mind when writing obituaries like this? I mean, yes, controversial is one way to describe it, but the Ayatollah, the regime, I don't really think there's any controversy or any dispute. These people are responsible for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of deaths, people being maimed, terrorism around the world. I mean, controversial, that word to me doesn't really cut it. Because controversial means there's really two sides to the debate. Here in the West, shouldn't journalists be more clear about exactly what people like this stood for?
Yeah, I mean, of course, these obituaries are completely downstream of a much larger problem. But, there is not freedom of the press in Iran. And so the idea that there are writers in newsrooms across the world drafting these obituaries as if they can even understand what it is like to live under an oppressive regime is really like a cruel and ignorant blow to the people who have suffered under this regime, which is millions of people who have suffered for decades. And so, like you say, I mean, it's the best read is that it's ignorance, but it's I think that's slightly generous given the fact that, like you say, these are people whose mandate is to know what's going on in the world.
That voice you're hearing, making her inaugural appearance on the Scott Jennings Show, is Maya Sulkin. She is one of the best journalists, the best reporters, and you can read her reporting at the Free Press, thefp.com. Her latest story headline, The Posthumous Makeover of Ali Khamenei, While Iranians danced in the streets, major Western outlets dressed up Ayatollah Khamenei as a statesman instead of what he was, the architect of decades of terror at home and abroad. Maya Sulkin, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll have Maya back in the future, I am sure. That wraps up hour number one. Hour number two is coming. We'll check the breaking news here when we come back, and more coverage of the war in Iran. It's Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
If the leftists haven't had enough yet, there's more. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people.
Here's Scott Jennings.
Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Monday, March the 2nd. Scott Jennings, Common Sense for the American people, reporting to you here from our nation's capital on Salem. Quick check of the headlines. A Texas college student has been identified as one of the two victims gunned down by a suspected terrorist in Austin in the wee hours Sunday morning. The victim's name, Ryder Harrington, 19 years old. He attended Texas Tech University. The gunman here from Senegal, wearing a Property of Allah shirt and sporting an Iranian flag. When he shot up that bar in Austin, several other people injured, some still critical. President Trump told my CNN colleague Jake Tapper this morning that the biggest waves of the American war effort against Iran are yet to come, and that we could be at this for the next few weeks. And the Iranians are continuing to fire ballistic missiles randomly into other Arab Gulf states. It seems they're doing more to create enemies for themselves every hour. War does not come without risk. So far, 4 U.S. service members are confirmed dead in this military effort, and may God rest their souls. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth held a press conference on the effort this morning. Here's part of that. Let's listen to cut number 4.
Hi, thank you. Cameron Arkin with the Daily Wire. My question is about some of the domestic threats, if any, regarding this right now. Have there been any concerns about Iranian sleeper cells, and kind of what has the Trump administration been doing to kind of monitor these threats?
Across the interagency, in full coordination, of course, we're paying attention to any potentialities there. This is a former regime, that seeks to export that ideology and try to sow terror. We're ready for that. We've seen these types of folks before, and the American people can rest assured that we're vigilant on that.
And to comment on all of this, we have the Dean of Academics at the Institute for World Politics, a senior fellow in national security affairs at the American Foreign Policy Council, and a former special assistant in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Please welcome Dr. James Robbins to the show. Jim, you heard Secretary of War Hegseth there. How do you rate his handling of the war effort and his handling of the media so far?
Well, I think he's handled the war very well. I mean, we're only a couple days into it, but as the president said, we're way ahead of schedule. So I think Secretary Hegseth has done wonderfully. I think his handling of the media was very adroit this morning. He was avoiding some of the pitfalls that the press were questioning him on certain things like timetables and troop amounts and like acceptable casualties and things like this. And these are the type of questions that establish narratives that will come back to bite you later. You know, if you promise a certain timetable and don't meet it, well, then that becomes part of the discussion. So what he did was he showed that he is going to maintain his flexibility and his agility. Whatever changes on the battle space, our guys are going to react to that. And, the press people just have to report on it and not try to get ahead of it.
All right. You spent a decade inside the Department of Defense and teaching at the National Defense University. When you look at the opening 72 hours of the war effort, give us your military view of this. Has it been flawless, near flawless? What's your analysis of how the United States and the Israelis have performed so far?
Well, it's been extremely impressive, particularly in how the Israelis and the United States took out the leadership of Iran just immediately, like a decapitation strike immediately. There was no, build up to this, no ramp up, no, crisis. They just did it. And that's impressive. That's fairly new in warfare. And, the fact that we've only taken a limited number of casualties, we don't know how these casualties were taken, but that's impressive in itself. The friendly fire incident with our F-15s, that's obviously not ideal, but it shows the chaos of the battle space. But overall, it looks like an extremely impressive couple of days in which the enemy command structure has been decimated. They're starting to take out the IRGC and the Basij and the internal apparatus of oppression that's keeping the Iranian people down, giving them a chance to have a revolution. And, it seems like everything, as the president said, is ahead of schedule.
Yeah, let's talk about what's going on inside of Iran right now. As you mentioned, we decapitated the government. In fact, the president said today that some of the people that might have taken over Iran were killed in the initial airstrikes. So it's not clear, really, I think, to most Americans what comes next for Iran. It may not even be clear to people in Iran right now. Also, I want to talk about what we're seeing in the streets. Over the last few weeks, we've had lots of protests. The Iranian regime slaughtered tens of thousands of protesters. Give us your view. What's going on inside the Iranian government, and what do you think is going through the minds of the Iranian people and the protesters right now? Do they believe it is their moment to retake their government?
Well, in the Iranian government, there's chaos. People are getting, killed right and left. We keep taking out layers of their command structure. Their units are now operating sort of semi-autonomously, which may explain why they're hitting targets they shouldn't be hitting, like a French naval base or, a hotel in Dubai, things like this. There's just kind of this chaos going on inside of their command structure. And with the people in the streets, they may be waiting a little bit while the bombing's still going on, waiting for their opportunities. They probably still are hurting from the fact that thousands of them were killed in the previous uprising, and the United States didn't really come to their assistance at that time. But now we're definitely giving them the chance to do something by taking out the government, taking out senior IRGC leaders, taking out their headquarters and their depots and whatnot. The means by which they could be put down. So the people in Iran, they're not as organized as they need to be, apparently, in part because the police state inside Iran has over the years killed anybody who might be a democratic resistor. So they need to get better organized, and they need to get weapons. If they can get those from the army, if army units come over to them, like they did during the 79 revolution, turning against the regime, but backing the people, they have weapons. There are a lot of weapons in the country. It just has to get in the right hands. So hopefully they're arming themselves and getting organized, because mobs in the street do not make a revolution. We need people starting to stand up and declare that they are the new government, whether it's in a town, in a province, or wherever. They have to start acting politically as well as just turning out to demonstrate.
Dr. Jim Robbins, our guest here in the second hour of the Scott Jennings Show today on Monday, March the 2nd. The president said today, and this is a new statement from the president, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities, we're annihilating their navy, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon, and we're ensuring that the Iranian regime cannot continue to arm, fund, and direct terrorist armies outside of their borders. What do you make of the case for war? Has the White House successfully made this case? What do you recommend to them in the days ahead?
Well, we've been at war with Iran one way or another for 47 years. The Islamic Republic is responsible for the deaths of more U.S. personnel than any single state actor since the Vietnam War. So to me, that's the case for war. We just haven't been fighting it the way we should have been fighting it, and now we are. When Secretary Hegseth talks about the IEDs that they faced in Iraq, those came from Iran. All the weapons, and the IEDs, it sounds like a coffee can full of gunpowder and nails or something like that. No, these are extremely sophisticated weapons that were tooled in Iran and then sent into Iraq to kill our people. So that and a variety of other things that have happened over the years, that's part of this. So there's that aspect. Yeah. Then there's the nuclear program, the missile program, all of the more proximate things that President Trump talked about that were threats to our country and stability in the Middle East. that's part of it too.
Dr. Jim Robbins, Dean of Academics at the Institute for World Politics, Senior Fellow in National Security Affairs at the American Foreign Policy Council. Jim, thanks for joining us. Sounds like we're going to be at this for a few weeks. We'd love to have you back as the war effort proceeds. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll hear a little more from Secretary Hegseth at his press conference this morning. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
We'll continue our coverage of the war effort against Iran in just a moment. First, here's something every parent needs to hear. More kids, and grandparent, I might add, more kids are being targeted online through gaming platforms, social media, and these messaging apps, and big tech is not doing enough to protect them. These companies profit from screen time and engagement, and predators often slip through the cracks. When they do, families are paying the price. Childhelp, our friends and partners at Childhelp, they hear from children every day who were contacted through these games and these apps, kids who were groomed, manipulated, and threatened by adults pretending to be someone else. One such boy reached out through Childhelp's chat hotline. He was terrified. He was ashamed. An adult that he met in an online game was demanding photos, and he was threatening to lie to this boy's parents if he didn't comply. This boy did not know what to do, but he got in touch with Childhelp, and that chat may well have saved his life, and that is why Childhelp matters. I support Childhelp. I know the executives. I have visited the headquarters. I have full confidence in Childhelp, and I have full confidence in telling you this, that your donation absolutely supports life-saving programs. $27 is what we're asking for today. Here's how you do it. Donate at childhelp.org/Scott or text Childhelp to this number, 94878. 94878. You send a text, put Childhelp in there, and you can donate $27 today. Childhelp is a great charity. They know what to do. They know how to protect children, and they could use your help. Let's talk a little bit here on the Iranian war effort about one of the heroes of the effort so far. A lot of attention, of course, rightfully on our president, who made a courageous decision, on Secretary Rubio, on the Joint Chiefs, on General Kane, who's obviously doing a terrific job. But there's a lot of hesitance, I think, in the media to heap praise on someone who deserves it today, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. Now, you might remember that Pete Hegseth was someone that the liberal media slandered and smeared for months. During his confirmation, afterwards, they called him incompetent. They called him a drunk. They said he was unfit for the job. A lot of Democrats smeared and slandered Pete Hegseth. What are the results right now? Well, let's see. The Ayatollah is dead. Maduro in jail. Not a bad record for the Secretary of Defense. Last summer, we obliterated and degraded Iran's nuclear capabilities, and we're back at it now. This morning, Secretary Hegseth gave a great press conference detailing the operation and what's to come. Let's start with what might have been the best line of the effort so far. Here's Pete Hegseth in cut number 1.
Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it.
Really good that our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, can give a press conference, make affirmative statements, talk to the media, and he is unafraid to say out loud that we are going to hold our enemies accountable when they come after us. And that is, of course, exactly what Iran has been doing for 47 years, coming after the United States. The President of the United States, by the way, has made some comments today. Let's hear from the President now. Here's cut number 13.
Poses to the American people, and a threat indeed it is. We have the strongest and most powerful, by far, military in the world, and we will easily prevail. We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. Whatever it takes, we will always, and we have right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it whatever Somebody said today, they said, oh, well, if the president wants to do it really quickly. After that, he'll get bored. I don't get bored. There's nothing boring about this. Do you agree with that, Pete? I don't think there's anything, Mr. General. I think there's nothing boring about it. Somebody actually said from the media, I think he'll get bored after about a week or two. No, we don't get bored. I never get bored. If I got bored, I wouldn't be standing here right now. I guarantee you that, to go through what I had to go through.
What's obvious to me today is that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, is locked in on top of every detail and executing a great effort, and the Commander-in-Chief is in it to win it, whatever it takes to defeat our Iranian enemies. One note before we go to break, we're still planning the cruise this November. If you haven't booked your cabin for the November Gulf of America cruise with Mike Gallagher and myself, I encourage you to do it today. Text the word cruise to 94878. Get your cabin today. We're going to have a great time. Be right after the election. We'll have much to discuss. More war coverage when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
It is Monday, March 2nd. Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings here reporting from Salem. And my next guest, I think, has the honor of being the quickest returning guest in the history of the Scott Jennings Show. He was on here late Friday to discuss the possibility of war, and now he's back today to discuss the war that is underway. Behnam Ben Taleblu from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Behnam, thanks for coming back to the show. I believe, based on the timeline that I've seen, while we were on the air Friday discussing all of this, the president was making the decision, giving the orders to strike Iran. You've been watching the coverage throughout the weekend. What are your reactions to the president's decision-making and how it's going so far?
Well, it's a pleasure to be back with you, and again, be back with you so soon. But, you know, the president just proved that he is as much commander-in-chief as he styles himself to be negotiator-in-chief. And he took a decisive move. And while some may say it was a gamble, the gamble already seems to be paying off. I mean, there are operations underway, joint operations, I want to stress, American and Israeli, that are designed to defang the regime of its long-range strike capabilities, go after not just the transporter erector launchers that fire these missiles, but the installations that house these missiles, as well as the launchers. And lest we forget, within the opening hours of the war, I think within the first 6 hours, it was reported that the Supreme Leader's compound was struck, and just after that, it was reported that the Supreme Leader himself died in the blasts and the explosion following the attack on that compound. And make no mistake, there has not been a decapitation operation against a sitting state leader in this part of the world that has been that successful that quickly.
Behnam, the intelligence capabilities here of the United States and of Israel inside Iran are just incredible. I think it was reported that the CIA sort of figured out where the Ayatollah was going to be. You had Mossad all over Iran here, and these two countries and these two intelligence services working together for the elements of the Iranian regime that remain. How much paranoia must be running through what's left of the Iranian government right now? I mean, they are probably looking behind every door and around every corner wondering, you know, is there a foreign intelligence operative watching me right now? I mean, chances are there probably is.
Chances are there probably is, and not just watching them, but is there also a foreign drone above me? You know, it's not just the coordinating and the planning with their colleagues and partners, where it turns out one of them might be a foreign agent or a foreign asset, or in reality, probably an Iranian patriot who simply just doesn't want to see their country go down the tube and is willing to work with major Western powers to stop the armed forces from burning through the country like they already are. That might be a more proper fit, we could say, for armed forces folks who are defecting or quiet quitting or working with foreign intelligence services than to call them traitors per se, because I think the Islamic Republic is the traitor to the Iranian nation here. And then second, of course, the capability, the fear, the long-range strike capabilities, and the fear that exists due to the drone power, the missile power, the air power of the U.S. and of Israel overhead could even be sensed during the 12-day war. You know, there was even audio of Iranian missile launch teams who were afraid of firing their missiles because it would, you know, signify where they are, and that could have been, you know, one of their last moves on this earth. And that fear Plus that, patriotism could foster defections, or it could foster quiet quitting, or foster more unit level individual pressure for opportunism and survival rather than continuing to carry out the fight. Because lest we forget, this is a regime right now that is headless, but that is still fighting. There is not a commander-in-chief at the moment.
Benham, talk to me about that. I guess it was reported that according to the Constitution of Iran, a 3-member interim council takes over. How does it work right now for them? Do they have effective control, decision-making control of the Iranian military? And maybe tack on to that this issue. I'm kind of stunned at Iran firing all these missiles indiscriminately into other Arab states in the Gulf, striking civilian targets. They seem to be creating enemies for themselves by the hour. What do you make of all that leadership, command, and control, and the decision-making going on with Iran's remaining military capabilities?
Well, let's take it from the top. You don't have to take it from me. You can take it from the foreign minister of Iran, who in a recent interview, in English, by the way, said that they don't control the armed forces, that the armed forces have their own target banks and preset plans, and regardless of the status of the politics, that these guys are going to be firing at whatever they want to be firing at. So again, this is what a government official in the Islamic Republic said. So there it goes to show you how much worth and value and even really capability and credence to deliver that these folks have, because they don't even seem to be controlling their armed forces. So that really does force us into the world of available military options rather than thinking there's a quick and easy political off-ramp here. The second thing about command and control, while the focus is indeed on the Leadership Council to assume some of these major executive functions, and that Leadership Council is composed of the President, Pezeshkian, this other cleric, Ali Reza Arafi, who we can get back to talk to. Some people have said he could be a potential Supreme Leader successor. Some people say he's more of a pliable face for the hardline national security deep state. And then the third, the head of the judiciary, Ejei. These three, legally and politically, are serving in that executive function, in that kind of interim leadership council capacity. And they will be doing this up until the next quote-unquote Supreme Leader is picked by the Assembly of Experts, which is a body of folks that the Supreme Leader has helped to steer their activities through, even though they were supposed to be monitoring his activity during his time in office. Suffice to say, the name we haven't mentioned and the institution we have not mentioned is Ali Larijani and the Supreme National Security Council today. Even though the regime no longer has an actual person whose title is Supreme Leader, that individual and that institution are, in my view, at this moment in time, the most important person and the most important national security decision-making body inside Iran today. So while you have this council that is going to be in place up until you get a new quote-unquote Supreme Leader, that individual, Ali Larijani, who heads the Supreme National Security Council, is going to be the most important person for command and control in that country, and we believe he is still alive. The next thing...
Benham, let me just ask you, what kind of person is that? Is he... I mean, how do you regard him and compare him to the previous leadership in Iran?
Consummate regime insider. You know, this guy served in the Quds Force in the heyday of the Iran-Iraq War. He's educated. He's held a whole host of national security, high-ranking political positions. He was a former Speaker of Parliament. He's been all over the place. He is a deep state insider. I know here in Washington, people talk about swamp creatures, but that is the swamp creature of that kind of a regime. He's seen all sides, worked with all factions, and believes in the mission. And in so many ways, he may be more dangerous because he's a more capable person. You know, an ideological person is ideological about their end state, is ideological about their goals, but they can totally logically and rationally, sometimes eerily rationally, in a very cold, calculating way, pursue rational means to very ideological ends. And that does remind me of not just this Larijani, but the whole family of Larijanis, who are sometimes jokingly called the Kennedys of Iran, given their political and economic wealth and impact.
That's Benham Ben Taleblu. He is the Iran Program and Senior Director and Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Benham, tell me something. I assume you're in contact with some people inside of Iran. What's day-to-day life like right now for the average Iranian resident? If you're living in Tehran, are people out? Are they going to school? Are they going to the markets? Are people generally staying inside? What is your understanding of how life is proceeding as this war effort is going on?
Well, what we could tell with the internet being turned back on after the protests that occurred in January and really was the forcing function of the moment, you could say, was that Iranians were really trying to, stay out of sight, but really all of a sudden burst back out onto the street again, and in particular during across multiple university campuses for 6 straight days before the war began to continue to chant and protest against this regime and to commemorate those young, brave Iranians who had fell 40 days ago. And they memorialized and eulogized and commemorated them. And in so doing, they actually fought, pushed back, a lot of, quote unquote, street fighting on university campuses between pro and anti-regime folks in that country. So it was a small microcosm of the state and society there on Iran's university campuses. But elder folks, middle-aged folks, a lot of folks were trying not to be seen, trying not to risk the ire of Iran's increasingly policing and patrolling national security deep state, and in particular their security services. That has changed in the outpouring of celebration and felicitation of the news of Khamenei's passing, because as you know, once the conflict got underway and a lot of strikes, even in around urban centers, were felt, people in Tehran, because they remember the 12-day war, tried to flee. And Tehran is the country's capital. Greater Tehran plus the suburban areas has a population of 15 million on a day-to-day during working hours. A little bit less, 10 to 11 million if you just count Tehran proper. Many of them fled to the north or to some of the provinces during the last war. So you saw that behavior again, but then you also saw road closures due to dancing and, again, felicitations that the regime could not control once the supreme leader had been announced to be dead. And these felicitations and parties went into midnight even Tehran time.
Ben, one piece of sound just into the Scott Jennings show I want to get your comment on. This is the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte. This happened on, I believe, Fox News a little while ago. Take a listen to what he had to say, and I want to get your reaction as we wrap up here. Cut number 7, please.
First of all, say that my thoughts are with the service members, the U.S. service members who made the ultimate sacrifice over the last couple of days. And let me also say that the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world, President Donald J. Trump, I really commend what is happening here. Taking out Khamenei, taking out the nuclear capability in Iran, but also taking out the ballistic missile program in Iran. This is crucial. And what I see in Europe, I spoke with all the key European leaders over the weekend, is widespread support for what the president is doing, and also making sure that when it comes to logistics, access, defending key U.S. interests in Europe and in the region, the Europeans are really stepping up.
Benham, are you seeing good, solid, proper international support for what the president is doing? 30 seconds.
The support is growing. Obviously, we'd always love to see more from Europe, but let me just take the UK as a small microcosm. They were a lot more skeptical about this moving into it, and there was a lot of room for improvement in their regional policy. But look, push comes to shove, it's the Islamic Republic that has actually pushed the Europeans, the E3, and in particular the UK, into our embrace. They are now officially going to be allowing Americans to use their bases to stage operations to go against the regime's missile program.
Benham Ben Talablu, Iran Program Senior Director and Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Benham, I'm sure we will see you in the very near future as the war effort unfolds. Thanks for joining us today. Quick word from our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. We're watching Operation Epic Fury intensify in the Holy Land. The sirens are filling the air. When they fill the air, you have about 15 seconds, by the way, to get into a bomb shelter. It is a serious situation. The threat is real. And in times like this, freedom and faith are not just abstract ideas. They are what we depend on. And at times like this, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground. They're preparing large-scale distributions of life-saving food and first aid. They help ensure that hospitals and emergency rooms and shelters are stocked with these supplies. If you want to join Christians and Jews around the world in praying for Israel and in helping the effort, I encourage you, please visit supportifcj.org. Supportifcj.org. Visit them today. We'll wrap up the show when we come back. A few thoughts on what Democrats are saying. I'm Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Fighting for free speech and Western civilization. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Home stretch here on Monday, March 2nd. We've had a Big show today, thanks to all the experts and analysts who have come on to talk to us about the American and Israeli war effort against Iran. A lot of people, by the way, having a lot of debates out there about, does the President of the United States need authorization to do this? Should he have gotten authorization from the Congress? You know, I was thinking back to the Obama administration and wondering, did Barack Obama need authorization to attack multiple countries with the drones and the bombs? I mean, thousands of attacks. And I thought, who better to consult? What expert better to consult on this than the Speaker Emerita herself, Nancy Pelosi? Let's take a listen to what she had to say back then in cut number 11.
So, Madam Speaker, Madam Leader, you're saying that the President did not need authorization initially and still does not need any authorization from Congress on Libya?
Yes.
Thank you both.
Thank you all very much.
Oh, wow, interesting. Speaker Pelosi saying Obama didn't need any prior authorization to attack Libya? Interesting to know. The Democrats, by the way, it seems to me, are setting themselves up politically for failure, because if you look at the statements of a great many of these Democrats and the candidates who are running for the House and the Senate this year, they appear to be taking a line that makes it seem like they're basically cheering for American failure, that they are anti-American. Somehow they are aligning themselves with the Iranian regime, the regime that has attacked America and Western civilization for 47 years, killed and maimed thousands of American military personnel and other agents of the United States, have funded terror around the world. The masterminds, architects, and funders of October the 7th, why are Democrats aligning with those interests instead of what's in the best interest of the United States? I mean, look at George Conway. He's running for Congress in New York. Here's his comment. Perhaps the terrorist state with nuclear weapons is, checks notes, the United States of America. This is a Democrat candidate for Congress calling the United States of America a terrorist state. Jack Schlossberg, part of the Kennedy family in New York City. He's running for Congress, and in fact, he has Nancy Pelosi's endorsement. His comment, we need regime change in the United States. He referred to the U.S. government, the popularly elected government, national popular vote, and electoral college, as a regime. We need regime change, according to Democrat candidate for Congress, Jack Schlossberg. What are other Democrats saying? Well, Zoran Mamdani, he put out a statement. I guess he was monitoring the situation there from his perch as the mayor of New York City. He said it was a catastrophic escalation in an illegal war of aggression. Bombing cities, killing civilians, opening a new theater of war. Then, in an incredibly tone-deaf part of his statement, Mamdani said, I want to speak directly to Iranian New Yorkers. You are part of the fabric of this city. You will be safe here. Brother, they are safe here because they're in the United States of America. They're here for a reason. They're not in Iran for a reason. The Iranians in the United States are not worried about their safety here. They would be worried if they were in Iran under the despotic regime we just decapitated. They're dancing in the streets here in the United States. They're not worried too much about this. What an incredibly tone-deaf thing to say. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, again, Democratic member of Congress. You cannot free people by killing them and destroying their country. So Tlaib has aligned herself with the Iranian regime, with the Ayatollah's regime. I mean, I question the wisdom of aligning yourself with the people who are already dead in our war effort, but they are. Rashida Tlaib trusts the Iranian regime as it was constituted. She thinks whatever they were doing, whatever you want to call it, was good. Was it good for women there who were being tortured and murdered? Was it good for the protesters in the streets who were being slaughtered by the tens of thousands? I don't think so. Predictably, Ilhan Omar and others have also aligned themselves with the fanatics instead of what's in the best interest of the United States. Democrats right now are in serious danger of looking like kooky anti-American radicals, and the Republicans look like pro-American, pro-freedom, responsible actors. That's it for today. We'll be back with more tomorrow. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Thank you for listening.